Ladies and gentlemen, it is Wednesday. Here we are, DebateSensei. We got Matt Shapiro Esquire with us.
Hello, how is everybody?
And I am Jared Kubika Miller. I am debate coach at Santiago Canyon College. And Tim is out trying out for the Ice Capades today. So good luck to him. He's actually made it into the second round, so that's awesome. All right. And those are my dogs in the background. So just like all right. So this is a two-part series. We were asked to talk about how to prepare for online tournaments. Last week was about coaches, and this week we are talking for students what to do. And obviously, there's going to be a whole hell of a lot of overlap between these two, right? But we're going to try to focus mainly on students and what they can do in order to just be prepared for the online environment that is inevitable when the next season starts up, okay? So I want to start off by saying that today I was fortunate enough to sign into a demo round that was put on by Debate Boutique. So I'll give a shout out to them. I really appreciate what they're doing. Demo debates, they're doing really, really advanced, like sort of critical work. And anyone who's in, more than, if they're out of their first year of debate, then it would probably be really helpful. I think we might be talking a little bit more to people that are just getting started. But there's definitely stuff that is helpful no matter what level debate you're in. So, hey, last week, Matt.
No one fills time like that, Jared Miller, by the way. Y'all watching this. Keep going, Jared. Last week, what happened, Jared?
Last week, we were having some trouble getting
yeah, I can kick off. Let's just talk about, today, I wanted to focus in on we're going to talk about how to prepare for online debate. And one thing we can kind of already start, splitting into categories is the difference between, say, getting ready for a synchronous debate, an online tournament, real time, like Jared and I are speaking right now, as you would, see in a regular tournament, but online. Versus the how to prepare for an asynchronous debate, which doesn't necessarily happen with people speaking generally at the same time. So just to start off with synchronous and to harken back to what Jared was talking about, I learned a lesson. We've been talking a lot about how to make a seamless performance, how to get your computer right to make sure that when you have a live time video audio hookup with somebody else so you could talk to them, conversation. One thing I learned is you have to have adequate space in your hard drive. That's why I have been failing at being on the show the last couple of weeks. I've been trying to explore different avenues, but to wrap this point up quickly, essentially speaking, of 100% of your hard drive space, you're going to need about a third of it at least to have high performing real-time video audio conversations for a synchronous style debate. So that's a new thing I learned. We've talked about a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, Tim would definitely remind us all that, as far as synchronous, again, as far as having a conversation like Jared and I are having right now, but doing a debate, you want to turn off all the programs you do not need on your computer. If you're running 50,000 Google, Chrome tabs, you want to close all of those up. You want to also, let's say you live with a family, right? And you have a bunch of people, kids in the house, mom and dad in the house. You may want to ask them, hey, during this 30 minutes or 45 minutes, don't go online, don't use Netflix and Instagram, please, or use it on your data. And that way...
that I was going to bring up is there's some low-tech solutions to problems, you know what I mean? And so just having a conversation with the people that are using your internet service provider and just so one thing is scheduling, because Matt, you just moved, right? That was one of the big
problems. It's hard to see. That's a moving box right there, and I have blank walls now. They'll be full soon, I promise.
Yeah, but I mean, just being unfamiliar with how your setup works, where the best spots are and stuff like that. You don't think you have to think that far in advance, but you got to think, like days and days in advance.
Yes.
Where to be? Where am I?
We've talked about practice, I mean, in regards to, performing well in debate, but in online debate, for sure, you're going to want to practice and see how your systems work long before you get in there. And I mean, even if you don't use the exact same types of program, there's different interface, conversation, programs out there, but they all essentially will draw a lot of the same power and a lot of the same, need for memory and stuff like that from your computer. In my sense, I was thinking I was 10 steps ahead. I got these brand new routers. I could not wait to set them up. And then I have the best internet theoretically I've ever had in my life right now. And then my computers are just crashing. And I was, crying at night and not being able to talk to you, chiming in, typing on the feed because, and I couldn't figure it out. But the long story short is I just looked at my, storage, about your computer, go to your storage. If it's full and you're having horrible, problems with your, running debates, you're going to have to, unfortunately, maybe get a hard drive and put everything on that and then delete your computer. Mine's a solid state hard drive, brand new. It still does that. So, but there's a whole bunch of stuff. Jared, I'm sure, what I realize we're talking a lot about, actual internet and computer performance. Maybe let's try to branch away, or you can continue if you want. But
you also got to think about like people aren't putting enough attention into where they're setting up their camera and how it's propped open and like what are they doing, you know what I mean? And so,
yes.
Are you on a cell phone? I've seen some really great diagrams about people hanging their cell phone on a clothes hanger. And you can hang that in a number of different places. One of the best places to put it is right in front of an open window in the middle of a sunny day, because now you got this big old light panel of just natural light coming in, and the camera is right behind it. You know what I mean? It's like there's no shadow. It's like it's just great. So,
another trick just right there, because what we're talking about a little bit of on your screen, okay? One thing that I for sure had, if you go back to our very first podcast, I'm not looking at the camera, okay? And Jared Miller over here is like, Matt, you got to look at the camera, right? And so one thing you should get used to in online debate is either one, being a hardcore looking at the camera, you don't need to see anything type thing, which is asynchronous. That's exactly how it goes down. And then two, in the synchronous world, make sure you orient your screen. Like right now I have Jared essentially right in front of my camera, right up on my camera. So when I do tend to look at him, it does still feel in a synchronous conversation that like I'm looking at him and he's looking at me. And that's something to start thinking about also as far as placement of the windows on your computer that you're using.
Yeah, but like just far enough away that you can use your hands, I think is a good thing as well.
Yeah.
Not all debaters really feel a need to have that sort of nonverbal attention to detail, right? You know what I mean? But there are, depending on what debate society you're kind of participating in, you might want to have some sort of gesture ability, and therefore propping it up. I've even seen like, you could just cut a notch out of a toilet paper roll and prop up your camera.
Yeah, get creative. I mean, you really don't, I need it to be 6 inches off the floor, then, use a book, use 10 books. I've used all kinds of stuff to get oriented with a camera to make it look more appropriate. You do want it kind of at your eye level, as from what I understand.
Yeah.
Like you don't want it to be too far down. You don't want it to be too high up. You don't want to be like, oh, hi, I'm Matt. You want to be like, essentially you're trying to recreate a conversation where you're just staring, me and Jared are looking at each other and we are enjoying each other's company. So that's the vibe that you're trying to create. You know what I mean? And so close, I was going to say two things about close. One, the way we talk, I think this is almost a theme through the episodes now, but when we talk about presenting yourself on a camera, it's kind of a lot like the same rhetoric we would use to discuss why you would wear, why do you wear a suit and why do you dress up for a debate round? Well, you're trying to present yourself in this way that by itself seems credible, okay? And like on its own kind of demands a degree of respect, because you've obviously worked very hard even to this moment to just be here in this round looking like you do. So that's one aspect of how, online debate is kind of like an extension of the suit and tie or the clothes aspect. And, I guess if you really don't care, then, let's try that out too. The other thing about clothes.
Yeah, you got to think about like the lighting too, like it's
lighting. And that kind of ties in with what I was going to say is your clothes. This is even kind of borderline a weird shirt to be online right now. Okay. I mean, I'd hope none of you are like having a, seizure right now because this is freaking you out, but certain clothes look very weird on camera and distracting. So like, that's another thing you want to kind of test before you get in front of cameras is, what does the lighting, some lighting flickers. Okay, I have two LED lights in front of me. I wish you could see them, but one of them is this old light I bought at Costco, and one is these new lights that I got online. The new ones flicker. Like if I turn them on, you would notice flickering. So I have to use this other one.
I mean, that's what happens with fluorescent lights too. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That also sucks. But seriously, get a freaking power strip. Find any lamps that you can and just
light. Yeah.
Like stack them. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
Like behind you, it's like just make as big a wall of light as you can.
And like speaking of like, let's just kind of dive into like what's behind you. All right, like in my personal opinion, if you have absolutely nothing, you should use a blank wall. Okay, like that is in my opinion, that's probably the best place to start. Is if you are remote for like on a phone or something like that, and you're recording, I would say a blank wall. If you do have a setup at your desk. All right, I'm not saying you got to change everything behind you, but if you have something completely inappropriate behind you, or you're not using some sort of like background filter, then you should consider that, okay? Because you wouldn't wear a T-shirt, for instance, that says something really inappropriate into a debate round. Maybe you would, but you wouldn't want them to. You're really showing a lot in your house. You know what I mean? So they get to know a lot about you when they look in your house.
I mean, I saw a pretty astute observation in an opinion article one time that Zoom on some level has made it a lot more personal because you're getting invited into people's homes, and so I think people have an opportunity to take even more control over that and make that just part of the presentation. Like I'm doing the books, you know what I mean? It's like
that wasn't an accident.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like I'm doing some academic learning stuff here. Book seems like pretty good. I had the opportunity to do it and I took it. So not everyone has that opportunity. And so even if you've got some sort of shelves, if you stretch a sheet over it and you just got some clips, like one of the best ways because it keeps it flat. People are hanging their stuff and it makes all these like ripples and like not so much. Like I would clip it and pull it tight, if you can. And so if like you pull it tight and pin it around outside of the frame right into the wall if you have to.
I got a desk a few years back and like I love my desk. Okay, it turns out I like love my desk, and there's a aspect of even being a part of this company and doing these things with you all that like. In my other life where I practice law, like there's also a need to have this space in your home where like you can get in front of it and all of a sudden you look like you're in a very professional environment. And I've been trying to, create that right here in my house, I got this little corner and hopefully you will all get to see it develop with me. But my point is like, it's actually not a bad gig because as we talked about before, this stuff isn't going anywhere. Like you're going to have more, times in your life where people are going to be like, yo, I need to have a Zoom call. I need to have a FaceTime. I need to have a, conference remotely. And that will never change. So you might as well start accounting for it now. And that's kind of one of those things that transcends debate in my mind, 100%.
Yeah. I think that there's like I was brainstorming for this. You know what, before I get into that, there are some things that you can do argumentation wise that would be preparation for this stuff. But last thing I want to talk about, which is like one of the easiest things to do, is test your freaking equipment, people.
Yes.
Like practice with the equipment you're going to use. Okay, so don't just kind of assume it's like, okay,
in the place you're going to do it, like the whole, like recreate the entire experience.
Yeah, as best you can, just and so that might mean like those low tech solutions where you're going and arranging time with people who know that you're going to practice. Well, I mean, that you're going to compete. You're also going to do that for practice. You're like, all right, everyone, we're just doing a practice, but still, I want to see how this works, and so. Yeah, like test your equipment. Don't take it for granted. Like there's just so much more to juggle now, in addition to all of your strategies and and the evidence that you have organized and everything like that. In addition to all that, you have these technology sort of problems that you got to solve as well. So like just prep it, you know.
I want to steer a bit right now because I think I know where you're going, Jared, and I kind of was thinking the same thing. Like, as far as research, we're going to start transitioning, I think, a little bit from tech, practical ways to get the operation of your equipment to go right.
Yeah.
For the last 15 minutes, essentially, we're really talking about synchronous debate, but a lot of that stuff does translate to any form. But one thing I want to jump on first is, in synchronous debate, you're going to prepare for your debates essentially the same as you would any other time. I mean, there's no difference. As long as your equipment is working, then you're supposed to have essentially the same experience as you would being in the same room as somebody. So,
Yeah,
go ahead.
We're testing the equipment. It kind of plays into this as well. What is the software that you're using, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have Danny Cantrell with Forensics Tournament, and then we have Gately is one that's being used, and there's a bunch of different ways that people are doing this, and so you want to like ask if you could sign in early.
Go to the software, go to the program, go to StreamYard, go to Zoom, open a thing, use the buttons.
Yeah, like, or do you have breakout rooms? Is that a feature? Can you do that? Like, if not, then like, is coaching allowed? If coaching's allowed, then you got to set up some.
Is your microphone muted from the moment you get in? You need to unmute it so that
stuff like that. All right, but like getting back to the actual evidence collection and everything.
Yeah.
It should be the same. Make sure that the login for your library, whatever. You're going to. If you haven't done that, it's probably an underused resource of yours. I'll
tell you something else is one thing, if you're full blown, I would almost consider it cheating. If you're searching the internet while debating synchronous or asynchronous. Another one is if you're using things like Google Docs. That's not necessarily cheating. I'm just saying that if you're online simultaneously while you're doing your debate, that program will slow down your that using Google Docs, even to take your own notes, will interfere with your camera, computer, internet performance as far as the whether it will be good or not.
I'm okay with people taking notes on their computer, but I still recommend by hand.
I would recommend using offline systems, even like notepads, simpler things that use less computer power. But so one thing I was hoping to do, Jared, here is kind of be like, look, we're not, we've talked a lot about prepping for debate in general. Okay, so what I really want to focus on is what are some advantages of, and how does a student prep for an asynchronous tournament? And how is that different? Because it's essentially exclusively online. So Jared, maybe Sensei Jared, what techniques? What's different, for instance, about prepping for an asynchronous debate, say from a synchronous regular old debate?
Okay, so this is what I really like about it is that you could just focus on one side at a time, right? And so when it's lead up to the tournament, you just prepare that one affirmative, and that's all you focus on. You don't need to put any effort necessarily into the negative. As you're collecting affirmative evidence, you come across negative evidence. I would be putting that aside so you don't have to find it again. But after all the affirmative constructives are done, then you enter into the negative constructive, or cross-ex, but the negative constructive, and you could just research as they come. You know what I mean? It's and that's awesome because you have way more directed research, and that's going to be put to actual use rather than the potential. When you're oh man, I really hope I get to use this card. You're going to use it. You know what I mean? It's kind of I don't know. I think that a lot of debate is trickery, and this
What do you mean by trickery, Jared? I want a little more. I think that's a short word that you mean a lot. What does that mean?
That people prepare arguments that can be defeated with a bit of research, but that your opponent can't do that research in the moment, so you bring that up. Or it's it's the hot topic of the day, and so allowing somebody to have just a day or so to look up what you said and craft their response is just something that is intriguing to me, and I just haven't, a wide scale application of it, and so I'm excited to offer that next season.
I think, just for the people who are really looking for the most bare bone answers, pre-tournament, okay, for any sort of public forum, LD, policy, any non-limited prep tournament, you're going to have some time pre-tournament where you know the resolution, okay? And it's your job to get the exact words of the resolution, and it's your job to write those down, and you need to go explore. When we say research, up in that time, hopefully it's a couple of weeks or a month or more than a few months before the tournament comes. It's your job to allocate some of your time to researching various ways to make cases based on those resolutions on both sides. In that time, you should, research. You should write plans, and you should write it out in debate format. Stock issues, stuff like that. You should write it out like that and even begin saying it. And, that's literally like how you prepare for any tournament, right? So that's not unique to asynchronous. And like where I think what we're talking about gets very, very different is, you may be able to sneak in a couple websites, in your 7 minutes while someone else is speaking, but in a regular tournament. Yeah. But in an asynchronous tournament, you're literally going to have, I'm going to watch Jared give his first affirmative, okay, which he's had 3 months to prepare for. Mm-hmm. And I have had 3 months to prepare my neg by now. But also, I'm not going to respond to his first affirmative and for a week, right? Like, let's just call it a week for the sake of understanding. Like, mm-hmm. Jared is going to record a video without the internet, essentially, generally, and then upload it, send me it through the tournament. I watch it. Now I have a week to respond, but I have to submit a video in 7 days. So in 7 days, I submit my response. Now Jared watches it. In those 7 days, we are talking about, you could rewrite everything you have. You could find some new thing in the research that they led you to because of their case. And you could just dive down rabbit holes where like you can explore, very specific researched responses that you do not get in a regular tournament. And what, I think what Jared's really saying is like, that forces both sides to really only put in something that they know there's no magic bullet that they just didn't know about at that time.
Speed is a big result for that.
There's not a day newer article that just completely removes that whole thing that they didn't know about. Like so often I remember that being a big deal.
Yeah, I think like the speed is also a result of that. It's like, well, if I could, I'm going to throw out, 7, 9, 12 arguments, and I'm going to see that they, just were unprepared for. But now, if everyone can prepare just for the arguments that you make, maybe you make less arguments. You know what I mean?
You know what's funny? We haven't done a video or anything on speed, and I've definitely picked up flavors of what everyone feels about it, and like what I do think is that it's something.
Yeah,
we should.
Like right now, because when you're preparing for online debate, like the debate I just watched, there was one speech in particular where the guy was like just killing it, but he was talking so fast that I think that the interface between the microphone and then my speakers, it just blurred everything together. Like, I mean, you get that enough distortion where I can't hear. If I was in the room, I think I'd be able to hear it, and he might be used to that too. But I'm not in the room. I'm hearing it through my speakers. You know what I mean? Like maybe if I put on headphones, maybe that might have been different. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I think you're right. I think that speaking slowly is advantageous because if there's
people are talking fast in headphones, you got headphones on. It's like it might not be a bad idea.
But you're right. That doesn't mean like the internet is weird and people cut out for moments, and it almost seems sometimes like the sound is affecting I don't know. But the point is like, in that sense, speed may be hindered where they're scared that if you don't hear them for a second, they just missed 5 sentences. But I've never, speed was something that when I realized that was what was in debate, I was shocked at first. I'm like, this is what people are doing. Like when they say they're debating, they're just speaking as quickly as they could. But sure enough, and I always tried to pride myself on personally not just spreading like as fast as I can just for the sake of doing it. But there's no question that I learned that once you learn to start filling time and running cases, the nature of debate is you start speaking faster. I mean, you just have a lot to say. And, I have tried to tone it down. That nowadays I feel like I have to slow down because I just tend to want to go fast. Now, I am not saying I'm spreading. And the last thing I'll say is I have always enjoyed trying to keep up with the fastest spreaders I've ever heard, flowing during the judging of the round. And, it's funny because I think of it as like an art in a way, but it's also like they take a massive risk because if I don't hear something, I mean, I'm not like, you're the one who chose to talk like this. And if you're not enunciating and flying through and not, making, the right syllables and the right words, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's on you, and like your performance is affected. But when people do it right, I love a good spread round. And as long as it's not, you can also tell when someone's got a substantive argument. Whereas like some people they're just breathing and huffing and puffing and saying words and doesn't really. I'm very conflicted. Like you guys always tend to be like, oh, I don't like the speed, and I'm always like, it was something that if done correctly, I liked it a lot. And as time went on, I spoke faster, but not full blown.
I was, fast enough to keep up with everyone in my sort of,
I'll tell you a funny story. At Cal State Fullerton, I went in and they didn't have parliamentary debate, which is what I did with you. And they did, and I was like, okay, so what type of debate do you have? And they're like, oh, we have public forum, and we have the policy team. And like that's when I was introduced to like the elitism of debate, where like the policy team is like this, they're the real wizards, and everyone else is the muggles walking around, right? And I tried out for the policy team, and the funniest thing was the first thing they ever asked me to do is they just gave me a sheet of paper and were like, read that as fast as you can. And I have a hard time reading. I don't know what to say. Like I could not read it fast. And like
being like an orator or something like that.
Yeah, like I could speak. Once I have the line of thinking, I'll talk really fast, but I can't read fast. Are you kidding me? So I kind of dampened my, like, I was like, this isn't, and that really is kind of what it's all about. In policy, it's very fast, right? And that's cool. Like, again, like I'm into it. And I always took it, I've judged many policy rounds, and I take it on as like I'm into it, but I ended up doing public forum. Let's just say that, and and I had success with it, so I was happy.
Yeah, I'm happy when people do any form of debate. It's fine.
Debate is debate, and I love it. And I think once we all get out, it's like that is what it's all about. And once you're in, you're in. That's how I feel.
I got one other thing about preparing for an online debate tournament is prepare for pandemic arguments, no matter what the topic. You know what I mean? It's like you have to think about, you should prepare your own affirmatives in that respect as well. That you should try to bring that up. Like one of the arguments right at the beginning that I liked was about how in this demo debate that I watched was about how the tournament being online means that now people are more recordable, and they're forced to be visible and stuff like that. And so it was I'm like, oh, that was that's interesting because it's so timely, and I think you should be prepared to hear that stuff, but you should also prepare your own position on that about how being online is affecting this debate, and being really conscious about that, being straightforward about that, and just letting people know. I think, I don't know. I like it.
Anticipating, through, you're talking real common sense, in my opinion. You're like, look, like, one way people can go that like is unique to right now is some sort of argument regarding the CV-19 or lockdown or something like how that affects us.
Online aspect of it. I mean, like, what like led us to this situation, but how is this affecting debate now is an interesting thing. You know what I mean? It's like,
It really, it definitely, and even in our case, right? Like it hyper focused on, alternatives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in the COVID sense, I always think of online debate as the alternative to zero, which is like, well, that's obviously better than zero. So, but it does have its own place, amongst the community, in my opinion, just because it offers access and it really just increases the amount of competition available to the student or competitor.
Yeah. I hope that was helpful to anybody who might be watching. I know it's like we're kind of making up the rules as we go a little bit. You know what I mean? And it's fun being at the very beginning, but at the same time, um, I'm anxious to kind of standardize. I hate that word, but I'm anxious to kind of get some sort of predictability about like what people ought to do, because sometimes
Standardized, like iPhone standardized phones. Like you want like a good quality, like just it does what you want it to do, and it makes you feel good when you use it, right?
well,
Like it's
giving somebody like an instruction manual for how to do this is really nice. You know what I mean? Like kind of get them caught up, and so we can start talking about issues as quickly as possible. If all we're doing is talking about technology all the time, I think that some other really important issues get drowned out. And so
it adds a layer
yeah,
of
yeah,
problems, if nothing else.
yeah. All right, everyone. Hey, that's 30 minutes for us. Matt Shapiro, Esquire. I'm
Thank you.
Deacon Miller, your professor of communications. We are DebateSensei. All right. Join us again next week. We will talk about something else. All right. Keep in touch. Bye.